The following content is a narrated account intended for storytelling and discussion.
Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. The quiet crackle of pine needles, a distant grind of tires on gravel. Ex-soldier Remy Barlow thought he'd found peace in the Colorado wild until the HOA showed up with forged maps, drones, and demands. They came for his land. They didn't expect a war, but Remy was ready. The first sound that caught my attention that morning wasn't the wind through the pines or the rustle of mule deer moving through the brush. It was the low, rolling grind of tires on gravel, a sound that didn't belong on my road. I set my coffee mug on the porch railing and reached instinctively for the pair of old binoculars hanging on the nail by the doorframe. A white SUV was crawling up my access road, followed by two more vehicles, each sporting the same sleek decals, Elk Valley HOA Enforcement. I didn't even know there was an HOA within 20 miles of this place. I stepped down from the porch and walked slowly toward the driveway, boots crunching across sun-baked pine needles. I kept my posture relaxed, but I already felt the twitchy alertness settling into my bones, muscle memory from years in the field. The first SUV rolled to a stop and three people climbed out. A man in his 50s with a clipboard, a woman with a badge on a lanyard, and a younger guy who looked like a bored intern in matching logo gear. All three wore the same navy jackets with HOA enforcement officer stitched over the left breast like some kind of parody of authority. "You Mr. Remy Barlow?" clipboard guy asked. His tone was clipped, professional in a plastic kind of way. "That's right," I said, folding my arms. "This your idea of a neighborhood visit?" "We're here on behalf of the Elk Valley Homeowners Association. We've been tasked with informing you that your residence is currently in violation of several HOA regulations and that your property falls under the jurisdiction of Elk Valley." Blinked once. "That's gonna be a problem." The woman stepped forward, holding out a laminated packet. "According to this map," she pointed to a highlighted area, "your parcel lies within the extended jurisdictional boundaries adopted by the HOA in 2019. Which means..." I didn't let her finish. "This land was bought directly from Gunnison County in 2021. Government auction, foreclosure. I paid cash. It was never listed in any HOA-regulated development." Never clipboard guy cleared his throat. Be that as it may, the previous owner failed to notify the board of sale. Technically, this structure, he gestured toward my cabin as if it were some abandoned meth shack instead of a fully rebuilt home, exists within the HOA overlay district. You were not approved as a member. You've failed to file for occupancy clearance. You've erected unapproved modifications, and your off-grid systems are in violation of neighborhood aesthetic codes. I actually laughed. Aesthetic codes? Buddy, the closest neighborhood is 6 miles down a fire trail, and your so-called overlay district wasn't even legal. There's no HOA here. There's me, 200 yards of trees, and a shed full of solar batteries. They didn't laugh. "You are being formally notified," the woman said. "You have until the end of the week to vacate the property. After that, the board will be forced to pursue corrective action, including reassignment of the structure and enforcement penalties. If you have questions, you can direct them to the legal counsel listed on page 3. I took the packet, flipped through it briefly, then tucked it under my arm. "You finished?" "Mr. Barlow," clipboard guy said, adjusting his sunglasses, "I'd advise you not to escalate. We're just the messengers. The board is prepared to act." I smiled. So am I. They stood there awkwardly for another few seconds, clearly expecting me to rant or argue. But I just stared back, still and silent. Eventually, they turned and walked back to their vehicles. I didn't move until the last taillight disappeared down the trail. Only then did I head back inside. I laid the packet on the kitchen table and opened my file drawer. Within 30 seconds, I had pulled out the original deed, the parcel registration, and a certified map from the county GIS system. I snapped photos of everything. Then I went to my security system terminal and pulled the video footage of the entire encounter, faces, plates, every word. By nightfall, I had already emailed a full report to the county assessor and a local land use attorney I kept on retainer. Old habits die hard. When you've spent years teaching people how to survive in hostile terrain, you don't just sit back and wait for the wolves to circle. You document, you prepare, and you sharpen your damn axe. I didn't know what game this HOA thought they were playing, but I had a feeling this was only the opening move. 2 mornings later, the coyotes didn't wake me. The damn motion sensors did. A steady ping from the monitor over my desk snapped me out of sleep just past 5 a.m. I glanced at the screen through a half-closed eye and saw movement at the southern edge of the property line, figures weaving through the timber like they belonged there. I sat up fast and leaned forward. 4 men in orange safety vests and white helmets were walking the tree line, 2 carrying survey poles, and a third hauling a toolbox-sized plastic case with blinking LEDs. Their jackets bore the same HOA logo I'd seen earlier in the week. Behind them, in the middle of the trail that I hadn't used in years, a compact tracked ATV was dragging a metal crate on skids. On its side, in bold black letters, it read, Temporary Security, HQ, Elk Valley HOA. I stared at the feed for a few seconds longer, then pulled on jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt without bothering to button it. As I walked toward the door, I slipped on my GoPro-style chest cam and clicked it on. One thing I learned in war zones and civil hearings alike: never meet bureaucrats empty-handed or off-record. By the time I stepped outside, they were at the edge of the clearing, setting up fluorescent marker stakes in the soil every 20 feet. A 5th man in a windbreaker and carrying a laptop on a folding desk looked up as I approached. Morning, I called out calmly, keeping my hands visible but not relaxed. The guy looked at me like I'd interrupted a city zoning meeting. Good morning. Just continuing parcel demarcation in accordance with HOA, Section 14C. Should only take a couple hours. We're installing a mobile operations point for jurisdictional management. This is private land, I said, stopping a few yards from them. You're trespassing. He looked confused, or pretended to. According to Elk Valley jurisdictional overlay documents, this area is now subject to environmental oversight and structural compliance inspection. We're not here for the building, just the land perimeter. The station will be temporary. That crate says Security HQ, not Survey Station. It functions as both. You got a warrant? He blinked, shifting slightly. I have authority under the HOA code and this directive packet issued by our planning subcommittee. You'll find it's consistent with, I held up a hand. I don't care what your subcommittee dreams up in your cul-de-sac clubhouse. This land is registered with the county, bought clean, and not under any HOA. You're installing structures on land you do not own, control, or lease. Leave. Now, one of the guys with a pole stuck it in deeper and mumbled something about getting behind schedule. I walked forward slowly and pointed at the nearest boundary marker. That's about 5 feet inside my line. I've got the GIS overlay to prove it. You don't want to be holding that when the sheriff shows up. That got their attention. We're not trying to escalate, said the windbreaker guy, frowning now. We were told this zone was in procedural transition. The county was notified. I raised an eyebrow. Good. Then you won't mind if I let the sheriff mediate. I stepped back onto the porch and made the call. Sheriff Willoughby wasn't my friend exactly, but we'd met twice. Once when a hunter got lost nearby, and once when I found an abandoned ATV full of empty beer cans near my well. He picked up after the 3rd ring. 30 minutes later, his cruiser rumbled up the trail. He got out with his usual tired face and hands on hips. He talked to the HOA crew first. I watched from the steps. Eventually, he walked over to me, rubbing the back of his neck. They've got paperwork, he said with a sigh. Looks like they're citing a map annexation filed in 2019, claiming this land was scheduled for inclusion in Elk Valley HOA under some expansion clause. It's murky. I've got certified GIS maps from the county that say otherwise. He nodded. I believe you. But this is outside my authority. I can't arrest guys for trespassing if they're carrying what looks like quasi-official documents. You want them off your land? You'll have to get a court order. This is civil, so if I put up a fence and block the trail and they cut through it tomorrow, then what? Then I'll have something actionable. But until then, this is a lawyer thing. I stared at the crate again. It had hydraulic feet that were being lowered, settling it into the soil like a parasite anchoring itself. I'll handle it, I said. He nodded and left. I watched them for another few minutes, taking video of the whole operation. As I turned to head back inside, one of the younger guys in a vest called out, "Nothing personal, man." Just a job I didn't answer. I just smiled thinly, walked into my cabin, and locked the door. Then I opened my laptop and started contacting lawyers. The crate stayed. That goddamn aluminum eyesore sat parked on the edge of my clearing like a camper that had overstayed its welcome, humming quietly at night with a backup battery fan that whined like a mosquito. It had its own antenna, motion sensor, and even a tiny security light that flicked on and off whenever an animal passed. I counted 2 raccoons, 1 deer, and at least 5 false alarms. Every time that floodlight hit the tree line, it reminded me they were still here, still watching, still pushing. I spent the next day reinforcing my perimeter, not with barbed wire or tripwires yet, but with clearly posted signs and updated GPS-tagged overlays. I laminated a full set of warnings and staked them out along the southern border. Private property. No trespassing. Castle doctrine enforced the signs weren't just legal fluff. In Colorado, especially out here in the deep country, people take those words seriously. You don't step across a line if you're not ready for consequences. But HOA thugs. They operate on the assumption that paper beats property. I drove into town the following morning and met with a woman named Jean Collins, retired JAG officer turned land rights attorney, the kind who still carries a .38 in her purse and keeps her paralegal on a CB radio. I liked her immediately. She flipped through the HOA's document packet while drinking coffee straight from the pot. "This," she said, tapping the map annexation page, "is a forgery or a procedural pipe dream. You ever file this kind of expansion, you need approval from the county's land use board, signatures from at least 2 elected officers, and notification to all impacted landowners. You receive anything certified?" Nothing. I bought the land directly from the county 2 years ago. Clean title. Recorded deed. No liens, no encumbrances. She nodded. Good. I'll pull the official GIS plats and compare them. If this overlay map isn't in the county system, they've got squat. And if they fabricated a signature from the Planning Commission, well, that's felony territory. That lit a fuse in my head. What if I told you the man who supposedly signed the annexation paperwork, Gerald Moore, retired in 2018? Jean paused. Then we've got them by the throat. I left her office with a folder of options and a mission. Dig deeper. That night, as I sat on the porch watching stars cut through the treetops, I heard the unmistakable whine of a small drone. I killed the lantern and stood quietly in the dark, tracking its blinking green LED as it hovered over the clearing like some insectoid snitch. It swept across the cabin, then dipped low toward the workshop roof. That's when I saw the small camera gimbal tilt downward, recording. I stepped inside, grabbed my slingshot from the coat rack, and loaded a steel ball bearing. Old school silent and perfectly legal. I waited for the drone to drift close again, then popped it square in the motor housing. The thing coughed mid-air and spiraled down into a patch of wild mint near the creek bed. I retrieved it carefully and brought it into the shop. Pried open the casing and pulled the SD card. The footage showed aerial scans of my roof, solar panels, rain catchment tanks, even close-ups of my security camera placements. This wasn't just surveillance. It was recon. The next morning, I took it all to Jean. "You're being prepped for seizure," she said bluntly. "This drone footage combined with their little crate and those boundary stakes, it's all meant to fabricate a record of non-compliance. Then they hit you with a claim that you're occupying or modifying HOA land without authorization. Instant justification for a forced reclamation. They're building a case on nothing." Exactly. So we give them something real to choke on. She sent a request to the county records office for any and all filings related to Elk Valley HOA expansions. I went back to my cabin and installed a new layer of cameras, including one in a faux birdhouse pointed directly at the crate. Then, just before dusk, I heard tires again. A single white pickup rolled up the trail. Out stepped a man in a button-down shirt and reflective vest, clipboard in hand. "Good evening," he said. "I'm here to conduct a compliance inspection on behalf of Elk Valley HOA." I stared at him. "You were warned about trespassing," I said. "This is an administrative compliance site. I'm permitted to enter adjacent grounds for the purpose of verifying safety protocols and reporting environmental violations. Not without a court order, you aren't." He smiled like a man who'd never been punched in the face but probably deserved it. "Once or twice. I'll just take a few photos and be on my way." He took 2 steps toward the house. That's when I unholstered the GoPro from my vest and hit record. "You have 10 seconds to vacate this property. You are trespassing. This interaction is being recorded and will be submitted to the county sheriff and my attorney. If you do not comply, I will consider this a hostile incursion. You will leave now." His smile faltered. He looked up at the nearest camera, then at the sign beside him. "Castle doctrine enforced." He didn't argue. He just backed up, got in his truck, and drove off without another word. The war hadn't started yet, but the first bullet had been loaded. The next morning was quiet in that loaded, false kind of way. The kind of quiet I used to get before dawn raids in Kandahar when the wind felt like it was holding its breath. I went through my routine like normal: coffee, systems check, a walk around the perimeter with the dog. Except now, my route included a wide berth around that aluminum box the HOA had planted at my border like it was staking a claim. I had a gut feeling that today wasn't going to be routine. I didn't have to wait long. By 10 a.m., the first vehicle rolled in, a matte black SUV with an Elk Valley HOA logo magnetically slapped onto the side. Behind it came 2 pickups loaded with equipment. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching as 6 individuals stepped out, this time with military-grade enthusiasm. One of them held a camera rig, another had a drone case, and a third was holding what looked suspiciously like a set of bolt cutters. They were all wearing matching windbreakers, complete with name badges and lanyards, as if cosplay made them legitimate. "Mr. Barlow," said the lead one, a tall guy with slicked back hair and a laminated binder. "We are here today to initiate the removal of unauthorized construction per HOA Ordinance 8.2. Your primary structure has been deemed in violation of Elk Valley's zoning overlay. We will be conducting a compliance sweep and initiating site reclamation." He said it like I was supposed to nod, step aside, and offer lemonade. The drone guy was already setting up his equipment. Another one walked straight toward my well housing and started unspooling what looked like a measuring tape. I stepped off the porch slowly, calmly, without a word, walked back inside the cabin, took a breath, clicked on the chest cam, slipped into my plate carrier vest, unlocked the wall mount, and pulled down the Mossberg. Loaded, safety on, barrel angled down. When I stepped back outside, the measuring tape guy froze mid-step. The rest of them turned toward me with that instinctual body language of people who just realized the situation had changed, and they weren't in control anymore. I said it once, loud and even. "If you are not here under court order, you have 30 seconds to leave." They hesitated. "I am on my private land. I am legally armed. I have posted signage. This property is under full protection of Castle Doctrine laws in the state of Colorado. You are currently trespassing. You are being recorded. I am advising you, for your own safety, to exit immediately." Still silence. Then drone guy nudged his remote forward, and the quadcopter lifted off into the air. Wrong move. I raised the shotgun, not to aim at anyone, but squarely at the drone, and fired a single round of birdshot into the sky. The drone sparked and spiraled into a nearby tree with a sharp whine. That did it. One guy dropped his folder, another turned and ran for the SUV. The cameraman dropped his rig into the dirt. I saw bolt cutter guy panic and trip over a tent stake, hitting the ground hard. 2 others scrambled into the truck beds and started shouting at each other to go, go, go. I just stood there, didn't chase, didn't aim, just held my ground and let them unravel. Engines roared to life, tires spun in the dirt. In under a minute, they were gone. All 3 vehicles fishtailing down the trail in reverse, chunks of gravel flying. Silence returned like a slap. I lowered the shotgun, clicked the safety back on, and slung it across my back. Walked over and picked up the folder one of them had dropped. Inside, printed photos of my cabin, solar rig, water tank, and some kind of checklist labeled Phase 2, deconstruction/transfer. I walked back inside and called Gene. "I need to come in," I said. "They just escalated. I've got it all on camera. You point the gun at them?" "No, just the drone." She chuckled darkly. "That's restraint. Bring the footage. I'll start drafting your statement to the sheriff and county DA later that afternoon." I handed over the drone's broken chassis, the folder, and my chest cam footage. Jane watched the video and gave a slow whistle when the drone hit the tree. "You know," she said, "in some states, they'd already be pressing charges against you. Here? That's textbook stand your ground. I wasn't interested in the politics. I was interested in winning." That night, I mounted new trail cams, replaced the warning signs with ones that glared in bold red, and uploaded everything to a secure drive. The HOA had made their move. I'd made mine. And now I had enough evidence to turn this into a legal firestorm. 5 days passed. No cars, no drones, no smug HOA representatives hiking across my clearing with measuring tapes and binders. For the first time in weeks, the forest returned to itself. Rain fell one night, a thick, drenching storm that washed the tire tracks from the trail. Deer came back into view near the ridge. Even the red squirrel that had been avoiding my woodpile resumed his usual war dance across the logs. I should have known it was the calm before another storm. On a cold Thursday morning, I walked out to the mailbox, half out of habit, half just needing something routine. And there it was, a certified letter in a stiff white envelope. Return address, Elk Valley Homeowners Association, Office of Legal Affairs. It wasn't a bluff anymore. Inside was a formal lawsuit filed in county civil court, Elk Valley HOA versus Remy Barlow. They were demanding immediate vacating of the premises, retroactive HOA dues for the past 4 years, transfer of property oversight to the HOA board pending compliance adjudication, penalties for unauthorized occupancy and structure, erection, an emergency injunction to bar potential retaliation. They weren't just pushing. They were coming for everything. I stood in the kitchen rereading it 3 times while my coffee turned cold. Then I grabbed the file folder marked defense, climbed into the truck, and drove straight to Jean Collins' office. She read the complaint slowly, without blinking, then slid it back across the desk. This, she said, is absolute bullshit, but dangerous bullshit. They've officially filed. Oh yes, which means we're on the clock. She moved fast. Within an hour, her paralegal was on the phone with the county clerk, requesting all GIS records of Elk Valley's registered boarders. I signed a limited power of attorney and provided full access to my security footage, land records, and the original 2021 county deed. Then came the good part. We pulled the map from the HOA's annexation claim, the same one they had shown to the sheriff, claimed in person, and now included in their lawsuit exhibits. Jean laid it beside the official county topographic overlay. It was like comparing a child's crayon drawing to a USGS chart, but it wasn't the borders that told the story, it was the signature. At the bottom of the HOA map, Gerald Moore, County GIS Supervisor, 2019, except Gerald Moore had retired in 2018. And now he was sitting right across the desk from us, sipping her bitter office coffee with a scowl on his face. That, he said, tapping the signature, ain't mine. Jean leaned forward. You sure? I've been signing maps for 32 years. I know my signature. That's traced. Badly. And this document never went through our office. I'd bet my pension on it. Jean smiled like a tiger. Good, she said. Because you're going to testify. We filed an immediate motion to dismiss based on fraudulent documentation and initiated a countersuit for attempted land seizure, forgery, and harassment. In addition to Moore's statement, we submitted the original GIS map showing my cabin clearly outside Elk Valley's perimeter, my purchase agreement with the county, the letter from the Land Use Commission denying the 2019 expansion attempt, security footage of the drone, the crate, and the trespassing, a notarized timeline of all contact with HOA representatives. We even included the physical remains of the HOA's surveillance drone, carefully bagged and labeled as Exhibit D. Still, Jean warned me, they're going to double down before they fold. People like this don't just walk away when cornered, they escalate. And escalate they did. 2 days later, a process server showed up at my gate. On foot this time, like he knew better than to drive up the trail. He handed me a revised motion from the HOA's legal team, a request for temporary injunctive relief. They wanted the court to freeze any structural changes on my property, pending ownership clarification. Freeze my property. While they argued, they owned it. Jean laughed out loud when I showed her. They're grasping at straws now. That's the move of a cornered raccoon. We filed a motion for expedited hearing. That same evening, I got a ping from my new birdhouse cam. It was a young man, maybe early 20s, creeping up toward the crate the HOA had left behind. He looked nervous, wore gloves, and carried a duffel bag. I watched as he pulled something from the bag. Spray paint. Red. He tagged the crate with a single word in all caps. Liars. Then he ran back into the woods. The next morning, the crate was gone. No trucks, no noise. Just vanished, like it had never been there. Someone from the HOA had come back quietly, under cover of darkness, to collect their little outpost and erase the evidence. Too late. I had the footage, I had everything, and in 5 days, we'd be standing before a judge. The day of the hearing came faster than expected. The courthouse was an hour and a half down the mountain, and I drove it in the pre-dawn dark, headlights sweeping over gravel and pine. I had my court clothes on, clean jeans, button-down shirt, boots polished like I was back in formation, and the folder with all my evidence strapped into the seatbelt like a passenger. Jean was already there when I arrived, sipping gas station coffee and grinning like a shark in a business suit. We stepped into the courtroom and were greeted by a spectacle. The Elk Valley HOA had brought a full legal entourage, 3 attorneys, 1 junior clerk, and a woman in a pinstripe suit who looked like she was born frowning. But the real showstopper was Karen Doyle. There she was, HOA president in the flesh, sitting with her arms crossed like a queen surveying peasants. She wore pearls in a Mountain County courthouse. Ridiculous. She didn't look at me once. Judge McIntyre was a lean, no-nonsense man with a voice like gravel and a glare sharp enough to sandwood. He opened the session with the HOA's motion for emergency injunction. Their attorney launched into a 20-minute presentation about community standards, safety concerns, and unregistered occupancy within expansion boundaries. They cited HOA bylaws, quoted obscure zoning code numbers, and even produced a color-coded compliance map printed on glossy paper. Then they unveiled their exhibit, the 2019 map showing my property squarely within Elk Valley's jurisdiction. Jane leaned over and whispered, "They just made our job easier." When it was our turn, Jan rose calmly, handed a folder to the bailiff, and said, "Your Honor, we submit this as Exhibit A, the official topographical map of county jurisdiction. Boundaries from 2021 verified by the County Land Commission." She handed over Exhibit B, my signed purchase deed from the county. Then Exhibit C, the letter from the Land Commission formally denying Elk Valley's 2019 expansion due to procedural errors. And finally, Exhibit D, the affidavit and in-person testimony of Gerald Moore. The courtroom shifted. Gerald stood, introduced himself as the former GIS supervisor, and looked directly at the judge. "That document they're relying on," he said, pointing at the HOA's map, "contains a forged version of my signature. I never signed off on that expansion. It was never approved. That map is not official. It's fabricated." You could hear a pin drop. Karen Doyle's face had gone from regal to rigid. The pearl necklace didn't look so confident now. Then Jean played the footage. The courtroom watched as a group of people in Elk Valley windbreakers trespassed onto my land, uninvited, dragging equipment, erecting illegal structures, and finally retreating in panic as I calmly invoked castle doctrine with my shotgun shouldered. And the safety on. No threats, no aggression, just a homeowner standing his ground. Karen tried to object, of course. Her lawyer rose and stammered something about context and selective editing. Jen smiled sweetly. "We have uncut footage. Would Your Honor like the full drive?" McIntyre waved it off. "No need. I've seen enough." Then came the real twist. Jean stood again and requested a subpoena for internal HOA communications, specifically emails and texts between Karen Doyle and the board. She cited probable cause based on evidence of coordinated action and forged documentation. Karen exploded. "This is outrageous. You can't just dig through my private correspondence." McIntyre gave her a look that could have frozen lava. "Miss Doyle, sit down." Then he turned back to Jean. "Granted, subpoena will be issued today. This case is no longer just about land rights court adjourned." Outside, Karen stormed past me, eyes forward, jaw clenched. Her attorneys whispered frantically behind her like rats trying to patch a sinking ship. Jan patted my arm. "We just cracked it wide open." Later that evening, back at the cabin, I received a call from a local journalist. Word had gotten out about the forged maps, the drone incident, the HOA trying to claim land outside its jurisdiction. A story was brewing. I didn't want the attention, but I also wasn't about to hide. If they wanted war, I'd give them the truth, publicly, legally, and thoroughly. And I had the receipts. By Monday morning, the subpoenas had done their job. Jean called me just after sunrise, her voice tight with caffeine and excitement. "We got the internal emails. And Remy, you're going to want to sit down." I didn't sit. I just stood there on the cabin porch, phone to my ear, staring at the treetops as she read. Email 1, Karen Doyle writing to her board. "The county won't approve our 2019 expansion, but if we draft the map ourselves and make it look official, no one up there will check twice." Email 2, "I've instructed Craig to lose the rejection. Letter from the commission. He says he knows someone at records who'll help us bury it." Email 3. That ex-military freak in the cabin is bluffing. Push harder. If we can get boots on the property long enough, we can declare emergency maintenance and file after the fact. That last one made me laugh out loud. Bluffing, huh? Jean forwarded me the entire packet. There were over 50 pages of emails and attachments, including draft maps with multiple revisions, one of which had signature placeholder use Gerald's old one typed in the margin. I swear I nearly dropped my coffee. "This is open fraud," I said. "This is felony fraud," Jean replied. "We're filing criminal charges." By noon, she'd already coordinated with the DA's office. The investigator on the case, a no-nonsense woman named Sheila Lanning, drove up to meet me in person. She asked sharp questions, flipped through every document with surgical focus, then watched the drone footage again. Twice. "Your documentation is clean," she said. "Impressively clean. I've seen law firms with sloppier records. You're ex-military." I nodded. "Well," she smirked, "Karen Doyle picked the wrong damn cabin." By Wednesday, arrest warrants were filed for Karen and 2 board members, Craig Turner and Lisa Melvern. The charges: document forgery, attempted land seizure, trespassing, fraud, and obstruction of justice. The county sheriff's office executed the warrants in broad daylight. Karen was taken from her HOA office in handcuffs, right in front of a lobby full of Elk Valley residents. Someone filmed it. The video hit local social media by nightfall. The fallout was volcanic. Elk Valley residents flooded the HOA office with calls, emails, and threats of lawsuits. Half the board resigned within 48 hours. The other half scrambled to appoint interim leadership, but it was too late. The county moved in with oversight hearings, and by the weekend, the entire HOA board was suspended. A special emergency town meeting was called, and John invited me to attend. I didn't want to speak. I'd had enough of spotlights and headlines. But when I walked in, the crowd went dead quiet. I saw familiar faces, neighbors from 20 miles down the mountain, old-timers, even a few veterans who recognized my name from the survivalist forums. So I spoke. I explained the truth calmly. I showed a few of the maps. I read 2 of Karen's emails aloud. Then I told them what mattered most. I don't care if you're pro-HOA or anti-HOA. What I care about is honesty, consent, and the law. No one should ever fear being forced off their land because of a forged map or an ambitious board president. Someone started clapping. Then the whole room joined in. The following day, the Elk Valley HOA was officially dissolved by county order. The remaining territory reverted to direct county governance. Several residents, free of their HOA fees for the first time in years, threw a barbecue to celebrate. I was invited. I brought ribs. Karen's mugshot made the local news. Her trial was scheduled for 2 months out, but the DA hinted there'd be no plea deals. Too much damage. Too public. Before the week was out, I received a formal letter from the county. It apologized for the stress, affirmed my ownership, and offered a goodwill compensation package for the legal ordeal. I didn't care about the money. I cared that the land was mine, that no one would ever again set foot here under false flags or forged papers, that the next person who tried would know exactly what happened the last time someone came for my cabin with lies in their hands and arrogance in their eyes. The mountain was quiet again, that old undisturbed silence I hadn't felt since this whole mess began, the whir of the wind through pine, the occasional crack of a branch in the distance, a silence not of emptiness, but of peace earned. It was early morning. A light fog drifted over the clearing behind my cabin where the HOA had once tried to park their tin can security HQ. The grass had grown back. You'd never know men in vests once marched through here like they owned the place. Now the only footprints were mine, and maybe a deer or 2. I walked the perimeter, like I always do. Habit from deployment, gun slung, not loaded, not anymore. I wasn't expecting trouble, but I never expected it the first time either. Near the trailhead, I stopped to admire the new sign I'd hung the day before. Stained pine, carved letters, torched and sealed with care. Private cabin, no HOA, no Karen. Trespassers will be recorded, reported, and ridiculed. A little humor goes a long way. Later that afternoon, a county truck rumbled up the path. It was Sheila Lanning, the investigator who'd helped bring Karen down. She stepped out in jeans and boots, no clipboard, no badge on display. Just a neighbor now. "Brought you something," she said, tossing me a manila folder. Inside, the official statement of ownership verification, certified by the county recorder. A gold seal glinted on the corner. "And this," she added, pulling a separate paper from her jacket. "Statement from the DA's office. Karen Doyle pled guilty this morning. Full confession. No deal." I raised an eyebrow. "No plea bargain?" "Judge made it clear. You lie, forge, and try to steal a man's land, you answer for it." Sheila crossed her arms. "She's looking at 10 to 15. "Justice," I said quietly. "She named names," Sheila added. "More investigations coming." County's cleaning house. We shared a few quiet moments on the porch. She accepted a mug of strong coffee, said it reminded her of field duty. Then she stood, stretched, and left the same way she came, quiet, capable, and with my respect. That evening, I opened my laptop for the first time in weeks. Dozens of unread emails blinked at me. Survivalist fans, veterans, reporters, even a state senator who applauded my resilience and defense of personal liberty. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened a blank document and typed, "What to do when the HOA comes for your land, a veteran's guide to legal survival." Might as well turn the war into a manual. 2 weeks later, I posted a short video to my channel. No theatrics, just me, my porch, and the sign behind me. Some people asked how I handled the HOA. Short answer, I didn't blink. Long answer, I documented everything, got a damn good lawyer, and never backed off my land. That's what it means to own something. You stand. Even if you're standing alone, it went viral. People from all over the country reached out, sharing their own stories, asking for advice, offering support. Turns out, Karen Doyle wasn't the only queen of overreach in America. I wasn't planning to become a symbol, I just wanted to be left alone in the forest. But sometimes the fight finds you, and when it does, you plant your boots, chamber the truth, and aim for the lies. Now I've got my cabin, my peace, my forest, and a damn good story.
The content is said for storytelling and discussion purpose only.